Good morning and welcome to Mystery Book Club. I'm Sally Hanley, author of the Holly and Ivy Cozy Mystery Series. And today we are discussing The Haunting on Dunbar Lane, written by our moderator, Peg Roche, a paranormal mystery. So, Peg, do you want to take over? I have printed out your book discussions from questions from your website, but I was wondering if you want to start with a little introduction.
Um, I guess so far as the questions, that was just some guidelines. That doesn't we don't have to talk about those, but basically, I guess I chose to write the book about a time when I was my sister had passed away, and I had some experience or some thoughts on her experiences in those last few months that she had. And I had a lot of friends who were involved with all sort of classes on spiritualism, and decided I wanted to learn a little bit more. When that sort of led me into writing the book. Also, I liked woodworking and renovations and things like that. So that was the impetus. So I guess I would ask, what your thoughts were, or if you had any questions. I would open it up.
Well, you know me, I'll always jump right in. I thought it was quite suspenseful, and I have to say, the ending uh like it's kind of you pull the rug right out from under us on the last page, and I thought that was kind of interesting, but I have to tell you that I was suspicious of this character because it seemed like she was not as forthcoming whenever she was confronted. So I wasn't totally surprised by that, but I was horrified by the ending.
When you say the character, were you referring to Elle or to Helena?
Elle. Elle is I read this so long ago now. Elle is the woman who has
Own
bought
the
the
house.
house and is
Right,
renovating it,
right.
and who is being possessed by this other character. Possessed is, I think, the word, right? Isn't that the what everybody is assuming is going on?
I think that's the word that's commonly tossed around, but I'm not always sure what. I think when I sort of get into when they're trying to figure out what's going on with her, that there's kind of a difference between um, the word possession suggests demons or a demonic
Right.
possession, and which doesn't necessarily apply to a ghost who has not been able to cross over.
Right. Well,
I
and
guess,
some of the things that happen when Elle isn't there, I think. And if it was a true possession, she'd have to be there because she's the
right.
agent, but some of it kind of goes on without her. So it's the ghost is kind of a, we could say, free spirit.
Yes, yes. And that was kind of interesting too, in terms of in doing some research as to what ghosts or spirits were actually able to do. There's a lot of different, like this whole idea, like if you, like in the movie Ghost, where, Patrick Swayze can walk through a door, that if when you read about actual experiences, that's not something that supposedly they're capable of doing. They have a force, but they can't pass through. Um, they couldn't pass through a door.
So that brings to my question now that you're saying this. What kind of research did you do that you know that? And what else did you learn in your research about hauntings?
Well, I think that I went back and read ghost stories for one thing, and then To be honest, at this point, I can't remember specifically what I was reading, but I was taking some classes on spiritualism. So we talked in terms of spirit's ability to travel. Um, so the spiritualist that I describe as Selena, or based Selena on, um, was probably my greatest resource, my
Okay.
major resource.
I don't normally read paranormal or anything that like that, but and it's been a couple of months since I read it, but I do recall that I like the cop. Of course, I always like the cop, but it though I know it's in my mind it's impossible. It seemed plausible that this could be happening, and you really drew me into the story. And it was one of those that, I had to read over like 2 days, not over a week or so. You really drew me in. You made me feel as though the characters were living and breathing, including the mean, nasty Helena. I just wanted to club her.
Which you may or may not have been able to do. So,
I liked how you, apropos of what George just said, how you had different characters have different um, levels of acceptance of the idea. Some of them were so skeptical, and some of them were, oh, well, maybe this could happen. So that was, I think, very realistic.
thank you.
I'm not sure if this was a factor in this book, but I'm remembering it from the Alan Grimes book, where if you're a police person and you are starting to believe that a supernatural force is at work in a crime that's being committed, it's pretty difficult to go to somebody else and tell them that without being fearful that you'll be, considered crazy yourself. Right?
I think that's why I thought it was kind of important to bring in, characters that had different levels of expertise who could look at the situation with her, as well as there were a few there that, were quite skeptical of the concept of um, something without the realm of reality.
Right.
And one of the most horrifying scenes was with Selena, the spiritualist who comes in, and she is so firm in her belief that she she's got this protective, she prays and for protection against this evil force, and yet she really got injured in this when this spirit just went off the off the deep end. So I don't know. Is that, yeah, I'm curious to know where did you come up with that concept that, like that uh the spiritualist could actually be injured?
Um, I don't know. I didn't think about that in terms of it, whether or not it was possible or not. I thought in terms of the fact that that Helena had uh, a force. I mean, from what I read too, that they can, they absorb energy from from living individuals, and that that force could be used for either for good or for bad. So her ability, the idea of electrocution too, that they could generate, such a force to injure somebody. Um, I guess I didn't think beyond the fact that she could animate something in the room that would injure another individual in the room.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
the electric force was the thing that made the police all think like, wait a minute, what's going on here? There was no electricity involved, or
Right.
there was no electric source for these characters to have been
Well,
electrocuted.
for the first one there was, for Karen Dodge, the one that was in the bathtub, they
Oh,
tried to
right.
look at the possibility of the radio falling into the tub, but that didn't jive with the injuries to the character
But
to
was she,
Karen.
was she the first one, or wasn't the man who was thrown off the widow's walk?
No, Harlan was the first one
Yeah,
that went off the balcony, off the
right,
widow's walk.
right.
But and there was no source of electricity visible from their investigation. So
And I forgot the reason that she did that to him. He was trying to get uh Elle to sell the house or not let her.
she was behind in her mortgage payments and had been trying. I mean, they had worked together for years. You know, I'm talking like I know these people. It's
You
like
do.
she, she had been dealing with him for years, and they had a good working relationship. But it was getting to the point where, because she was in the process of renovating the house and not doing her private renovations, she didn't have the income until the place was to the point where she could open it as a bed and breakfast. So she didn't have any source of income. And so he was talking to her in terms of, and he had to get a little more forceful in terms of, this is business. As much as I care about you, I can't let the non payment go on. And so Helena stepped in.
Yeah. I think anybody who gets behind in their mortgage would like her on their side, right? Oh
So
gosh. I think one of the questions you have in your book discussion questions is, do you believe in the possibility of ghosts or spirits? And do you believe there can be both good and evil spirits? And what does the concept of exorcism mean to you? Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I
so
Go ahead, Patty.
I have I've experienced a few things, not really more like premonitions. Um, but I think that it's possible because my second husband, he died, excuse me, he lived up north and I lived down here. And one night, of course, I'm married again, my husband now, and I heard him say, I was in the kitchen, my husband was in the living room. I heard him say, "Goodbye, Patty." And I turned around and said to my husband, "Did you hear that?" And he said, "No, what?" And I said, "I think Scotty said goodbye." And it was 8:20. So the next day, his first wife, Scotty's the guy that died's first wife, called and was hysterical and said that he had died of an aneurysm. And I asked her what time, and she said, "I don't know. It was between 8 and 8:30." So I really think he told me goodbye. So I believe.
I had a cousin who the almost the identical thing happened. She was on a train traveling down to see her parents, and in the meantime, or during that time, her mother passed away. And when she got to the home, she asked, what time did her mother pass? Because she had felt something while she was on the train. She had sort of dozed off, and when she woke up, she just knew that her mother had passed,
Yeah.
and the time jived with what she was told. So,
Well, we had made a promise early on that when we died, we would tell each other. And so
Ooh.
that all came back. It was really weird, really weird.
well, I was saying, when my sister was in the later stages, um, she was in the bathroom, and I came in to help her. She was sitting at the sink, and she was crying. And I said, what had happened? And she said, Mom and Dad were here, and I told them to go away. And she felt bad about telling them that she,
Oh,
to go away. She was crying. And I said, because I couldn't quite believe it, what do you mean? And so she explained that they had been there. And, I told her I was sure that they understood, and it surprised me. But it happened another time when my sister and I were helping her in the shower. And she said, who are all those other people back there? So she was seeing, she knew Mom and Dad were there, and but who were all those other people that were with them?
Wow.
So I, and I had read, or I went on to read a number of stories because I did some work with hospice too, and it's apparently very common that just as in your case, that people, when they're passing, often will see somebody, and they often, if they're in bed, they'll often apparently look up sort of towards the left,
mhm.
and that tends to, for whatever reason that is, that tends to be where they see a spirit. So
Wow. Linda, were you going to say something?
So I'm a data scientist, so you guys know, not really that, but I saw a ghost once, and I saw more than once, which is why I would even say it. And we were living in an old slave quarters in St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. It was in back of a plantation house, a separate building. And several times our bed was against the wall where the door was, but I woke up and saw a black man with short, and I visualize him to this day, not looking at me, but looking into the other corner of the room, like he was looking over his children. That's the sense I got, was he was looking to see if, like you'd stand in the door and see if your children are sleeping and if they're okay. And since I saw it more than once, I think I had that. It was very weird.
Wow.
Mhm. Very weird,
Fascinating.
yeah.
What about exorcism? Oh, did somebody else have something to say?
oh no, I was just going to say I also had I lived in Ireland on and off for about 5 years and heard a number of stories over there. And one was the mother of a friend of mine was talking about when she was in her early years for marriage, they were living down on the farm, and they in the farmhouse, and they were upstairs. And one night she woke up, and her former nanny, or aunt, I remember it as a nanny, was standing at the foot of her bed. And then the woman kind of faded away, and she started smelling smoke. And, but it wasn't registering with her, I guess. And um, whether she went back to sleep, I'm not sure, but she woke up again, and the woman was back. And basically, then she could tell that the room was starting to really smell of smoke. And so she and her husband were able to get the children and themselves out of the house. The house went up in
Wow.
flames. And she said she knew that the only time that this woman would come back to her was to help her. And that's what happened. So yes, I definitely think
I
that
do
there are
believe in
spirits.
spooks. I do believe in spooks, yeah.
I do, I do believe, I do believe. Yes, yes.
Yeah. But earlier you touched on exorcism, but exorcism being associated with some kind of demon possession. Um, but is this also something that is used to get spirits who are not crossing over, so to speak? Um, is that something that you came across in your
As
reading?
far as as far as I knew when I was looking into exorcisms, that the Catholic Church were the only group that practice exorcism using that word. And so there were the two symbols that they used. One was speaking in tongues, and I can't offhand remember what the second, but there is some definite outlines for what constitutes a demonic possession. And I wanted a priest to be part of that group that was looking at what was going on with the Helena situation, because I think that there is a difference whether or not exorcism is used for a good spirit. I didn't get that impression from the people I had talked to or what I had read. So, but the spiritualists that I dealt with um, had done a number. She said a lot of times a spirit becomes attached to something, which I mentioned in the book, in terms of not just a house, but it can also be like a piece of furniture or something that they were closely attached to. And if that moves from one place to another, the spirit will go with them. So she had been called out a number of times, like when people identified something unusual happening within their house and thinking that there was a ghost. And she could say, and she, um, how would I say that? She would ask them such questions as, have you brought anything into the house lately that's new? And they would be able to tell her about a piece of furniture or something that happened. And she was able to work with that and um, help guide the spirit into the next life.
Interesting. Interesting.
Using, again, she talked about building a shield when she was dealing with the spirit to protect herself, because you don't want to get sucked into whatever their energy in whatever their energy is. So the process of how you did that and what she would say to the spirit was basically what she had told me is how she did it. And that it didn't always work the first time. It wasn't like, you know, a perfect procedure, but most of the time it worked.
I wonder whether some personalities are more likely to come back as spirits. You think of a really strong personality just doesn't quite give up. Or did any of them talk about that? Because you made Helena a very determined, strong person.
That it usually was, from what I could gather, it's usually attached to unfinished business that
Mm,
somebody had. So for Helena, that was her main attachment. She wanted to stay with her house. At least that's the way that I um, read it,
mhm.
constructed it. So unfinished business. Like again, looking at the movie Ghost, his was basically to make sure his wife was going to be okay after he had been murdered.
Mm.
So
Let's get back to Elle. She was not a really likable character, right? Even when she was herself, before she bought this house, right? Uh, I mean, we don't know that much about her, and everybody seemed like, the connections she had, but it did bother me that every time somebody would confront her when she was not under the control of Helena, she didn't really acknowledge, which is why the ending, like really, I thought, uh-oh, yeah, of course. Um, what exactly was your intention there? That she really wants to be controlled, or
I thought of it being that she was unaware that
Oh,
she had been, under Helena's spell. So when somebody asked her questions about why did you do this, or she, like the issue of smoking, she was totally against smoking. So for somebody to suggest that she had been smoking, she didn't understand what they were talking about or how that could have happened. And
right.
she understood, I mean, she knew about Helena, but she didn't understand the concept of Helena taking possession of her. I mean,
Uh,
that
okay.
was too
Okay.
weird.
And so the ending, Helena just pretended to go away.
Well,
Is that what we're how we take it?
she no, I think she actually did, but she came back. I don't think.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
mean, that was my reading. That just because somebody did cross over doesn't mean that they couldn't cross back.
Oh,
I don't. I don't know how that works exactly. I didn't. I didn't get really a clarification of that, but that's the way that
okay. All right.
that she was weakened, definitely, and she did want to see. Uh, was it Robert, her husband? He
Right.
was the one I think that drew her across, but um, who's to say what the pull of the house or her previous um, experiences hadn't been what had drawn her back.
Yeah.
So,
So
so.
Tom King, in the beginning, I kept thinking, what do you see in this woman run? Just run as far away as you can, right? But he kept coming back, even though it seemed that, like I don't know, did his interest in her completely go away? Or was he, because I can't think of anything worse than him going out with her now that she's, Helen is back.
Well, I think prior to the last couple chapters, I think Tom was basically there, or I think what his motivation would have been was his commitment to the mystery of what had happened to both Harlan and Karen Dodge, and
Right.
and the fact that he was working or had committed himself because of what Mark had asked, what the police, his the Jacobsport police chief had asked him to look into. And once he saw that there was something weird there, I think that's what kept him. Yes, he did feel that attraction, but I think his primary reason for staying throughout. And then, of course, when she whacked him and locked him in the cellar, that he definitely wanted to know, what was going on. So I think that, and I think he probably, as all of them did, thought that Selena had solved the problem in the end.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I didn't feel that that probably had truly happened.
You
So,
know, the I, I'm trying to think of what just went on. I think the idea I had just flew right out of my head, but oh, I know what I was thinking about. Nora Brady. Good Lord, she's like a minor character in this novel. How did that
mhm.
happen? She's your heroine in your series, and she plays a really minor role here.
I didn't really see a role beyond sort of helping Tom King
Yeah.
figure out what was going on or what the connections could be. Um, yeah, she's there, but she didn't play a major role there. She doesn't play a major role in my next one either. So she's kind of like the coordinating figure.
Oh, I think that's an interesting move on an author's part to take their lead character and draw them back. Interesting, interesting, very interesting. How did
Hey,
everybody else?
did
Oh,
you have a specific house in mind when you designed this? I mean, it seems like you really visualized it so clearly. Uh,
Well, the house that's on the cover is
mhm.
called the Pink Lady. And that is a house in Eureka, which is my fictional Jacobsport.
Uh-huh.
And that was really funny because I talked to the artist that I'd been working with, about basically, I thought that there should be um, a Victorian house on the cover, is what I was visualizing. And when she came up with that, I mean, we don't live anywhere near each other. She had picked this out of the blue, and I couldn't believe, when I actually saw it. So, um, yes, that. It's called the Pink Lady, and it was built by the other house that's in Jacobsport. I'm trying to think what the actual name of it is, but there's a Victorian that's very well known in Jacobsport that was built by one of the uh, robber barons of the lumber industry, and he built the Pink Lady for his son when he got married. So they're right across the street from each other, but they're both beautiful old mansions. Um, so yes, I had a picture in my mind what I wanted. There are a number of beautiful mansions in that area. So old mansions. So
I wonder sometimes I listened to the book. Sally had a an audio and I listened to it, but I listened to it so long ago because I listened to it as soon as I got it because I was curious about it. And then I forgot it. And then with Christmas and everything else, it just went out of my mind. But as you talk about it, it comes back to me. I think just about every old home has some sort of story about some kind of a spirit working in the house somehow, some way. So evidently, spirits attached to things, especially homes, seems to be a real one. My daughter had an old house that she fixed up, built in the 1920s in Connecticut, and it was a judge who lived there, and he came back to haunt. And he wasn't nasty or anything, but my daughter said she had some good conversations with that judge in real time. Not that it was audible on his part, but she would yell at him about things that went wrong with that house. And how could you let this go? Things like that, kind of in jest. But I do think that there probably there are things. I've certainly been in haunted houses. Um, and it is spooky, it's scary. And there is I have like a boundary of so much of that I can take. And then my mental, spiritual, whatever says, okay, that's it. I'm backing out of this situation. It's getting too real, too dark, I don't need that. So I think there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of play when you write about something like that because there's no scientific, this is the way it is for spirits. And
mhm,
because usually there's somebody else who's, oh, wait a minute, and they'll
yeah,
tell a different story. So you really have a lot of play with the way you worked in the book. I enjoyed the book very much, by the way.
thank you. So
Um,
the house that I bought, a house that was built in 1934 in Eureka, and it was built by the former one of the former mayors of that area, who had a joinery. So people would bring home, people who worked in the mills were able to bring home extra lumber at different times. And the house, he built the house not for himself, but for his one of his girlfriends who happened to teach music at the local high school. And the room, the front room, I mean, it was a small house. It was just like 2 bedrooms, but it had a pretty good size living room. And in the front, there were bay windows in the front of the house, and there was a baby grand used to be there. And I learned about the whole relationship because I had a couple that I worked with in home health that I took care of both the husband and the wife at one time or another, and they had both taught music at the local high school. So they, of course, knew they were in the same generation with this mayor and music teacher. And so it was fun but I never had any actual paranormal experiences myself. But I've just found the whole issue totally possible. And I don't know how I would react if if I actually came across a ghost. I like to think I would be accepting, but
Depends on
I
what they
don't know.
did. It
If
depends
they
on what they did.
depends on what they did, right?
If it
So,
was threatening, I'd be out of there.
well, I think one of the things that they have, I think, reported as being pretty common is if the ghost is upset with you, they do things like open cabinet doors and throw things around, and also line up, like the issue of, at one point I have her opening the cupboards and throwing stuff around, but also lining up the chairs in the kitchen, which was something else that apparently was pretty common for a ghost to do.
That reminds me, I have to read the third in a trilogy that Nora Roberts has just put out. I forget what the name of the trilogy is, but in this book, a young woman inherits this mansion, and the spirits do the housework, they do the cooking. And
Wow.
I thought, wow, like it's like everybody's dream, right? It's
Yeah.
a fabulous story. But yeah, there's a mirror in the house that you go through, and that's where the great where
Wow.
there is a curse on the house that the main character has to uncover. So I have
What
to get
book
that.
is that?
It just reminded me that I know the third book has come out. I have to go and get that so that I can find out how that gets resolved. Patty, I think you were going to say something.
Oh, I forgot all about this, but I lived in a funeral parlor, real old funeral parlor.
Here, excuse
Um,
me, got to leave.
Okay,
Sorry.
Judy, thanks for attending.
Thank you. Bye bye.
I and okay, I lived in a funeral parlor, and I had this cat that I dearly, dearly, dearly loved. Well, it was just really eerie. But anyway, my cat went missing. And I cried and cried, I couldn't find it, but I kept hearing the cat. And I don't know how, but the cat, it had these great big giant baseboards, in the funeral parlor. So anyway, I got the landlord to come over. I said, there's something wrong. The cat's in this house and I can't find him. So he took one of the baseboards off where I heard the meowing. And I always felt like that house ate my cat. He was okay, but it was really weird.
Oh,
All
That
kinds of
is.
things.
Oh gosh, that's funny. Not
Yeah.
funny and not funny.
Yeah, yeah,
Pretty
yeah.
horrifying to think the cat's stuck in the wall somewhere.
It
Uh,
was.
I know in my family, there was well, on my mother's side, there were so many superstitions that we had to live by, right? Uh, but there, the house that I grew up in, my grandfather had built, and we moved to New Jersey and sold that house to cousins of mine. And my grandfather came to New Jersey with us, and a few years later, he passed away. And uh, my aunt was babysitting the children in the house that my grandfather built. And one night, she said they were downstairs, and all of a sudden, she heard footsteps going up the stairs. And it turned out this was 3 days after my grandfather had passed away. And this was I remember my mother saying the belief was that 3 days after a person passes away, they return to all the places they lived in their lifetimes. Now, where does a superstition like, or a belief, let's put it that way, where does a belief like that get started? Who knows? But it definitely was a little on the spooky side. Now, here's the funny thing. When my grandfather passed away, living in New Jersey, he was working at a funeral. He was working as a night watchman right up the street for walking distance from us. And every morning when he would be coming home from work, I would hear his footsteps coming upstairs. And then then I would know it's time for me to get up and get ready to go to school because I was always the first one up. And after he passed away, for several days, I kept hearing his footsteps. And now I could have been dreaming. It's possible that that was just a dream, but I remember being like freaked out after, and I didn't want to talk to anybody about it because, I thought they're going to think I'm crazy. But I don't know, to this day, I don't know if that was real or if I dreamt it. But it's interesting. Well, so many of the times too, the spirit stories that we hear are that they return in dreams. You say, "Oh, I had a dream." And they go, no, you didn't have a dream. They really came to visit you, but that's how they're able to do it. So that also, I kind of believe in that. So it's interesting to visit the many stories that we all have about beliefs that you have or tales that you've heard about this. So it makes you believe that, yeah, it's there's got to be some truth in it because there are a lot of, if not identical stories, similarities between them, among them. So it's kind of interesting.
I think it's very comforting also,
Yeah,
to think that there is that possibility that your
there's life.
grandfather was coming, that was his
Yeah,
routine,
yeah,
and for you to know that, he was still
yeah,
part of your house.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
comforting to me to know that, you know, when in my sister's case, that my parents would be there, and now she's there. When I pass, there'll be somebody
yeah,
there for me. I think that's nice.
yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, we do want to believe that there is something beyond, right?
I
We
was taking care of another nurse um, when she was in her later stages. And I had known her from working in the hospital as well as I was working in infusion at the time. But, I had known her and I knew her husband also. And so there was a certain amount of ability to ask, more personal questions. And I asked her, if she had actually been seeing people herself, because she was at the end. And she said, yes, she had been people in her family who had passed. So I thought that was, you know, nice also to be able to relate.
Well, that seems to be, I don't know if anybody ever watched Long Island Medium, but
Little
she
bit.
seems to be the real deal. It's hard to believe that she, uh, with so many people, and uh, she said growing up, she was totally freaked out by this ability to uh, to hear these voices and everything. But as she, she got help from other mediums for dealing with this and how to shut it down, because she says spirits are coming at her all the time to deliver messages to people who are alive. Uh, but there are a lot of the similarities, and there is definitely the idea that all these folks in your life are going to be waiting for you when it's time for you to cross over too. So that's kind of interesting. So
Well, this,
go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, so the spiritualist that I was dealing with did clarify the fact that she was not a medium. She didn't necessarily talk to.
Right.
Um, she could relate to them, but she was not somebody that would contact
Yeah. Yeah.
those who had passed.
Yeah. It's I mean, there are plenty of charlatans out there, but I think that there are people for whom this is a very real ability. So it's interesting. Does anybody have any parting words on Peg's book before I introduce where we're going next month?
It was great.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Very interesting.
Loved it.
Thank you.
really, really
Thank,
good. I'm
thank you.
going to share my screen with you now if I can. uh, And let's see if I can go to where. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
Okay. So Linda Whitaker, who's with us today, LM Whitaker, is our moderator for the next 3 months, even though I'm still calling it a quarter, even though we're 1 month over. And then second quarter is going to be a little mashup, and then we'll be back on quarters in the mid-year. But Linda is our resident thriller writer. What's the other? What's the full terminology for your genre that you're interested in? Techno thrillers, right?
Hmm. Um, yeah, I write thrillers kind of laced with science and technology. So
Right.
I have a Substack site and I do a podcast where I bring in authors and talk about books that are specialty thrillers. And Peg came and helps me talk about Bellevue. So a few months ago, that was awesome. Yeah, where I talk about legal and medical and law and tech thrillers and all kinds of fun things like that. So, but for this quarter, I picked the top three books, three mysteries. Dead Money's kind of a thriller mystery, but I picked the three mysteries that I read in 2025 that were my favorite. That's how I picked them. So, even though Downriver is an old book and I've read it before, but I read it again, it's still one of my favorite books. So I thought I'd just make everybody read it. But
Well, I don't know if anybody's on Linda's mail list and it gets her fact to fiction Substack uh, emails, but she talks about Dead Money. She'll be talking about it in March after our mystery book club. And she's got a brief description of it, which I thought was kind of fascinating. It's a almost like a parody of the uh, high tech industry,
yes.
computer technology industry, because these guys are quite full of themselves. In case you're not at all familiar with it, it's pretty clear that they all think that they have a direct conduit to God. So I'm looking very much forward to that. So next month we will be reading Dead Money, and I'm going to be sending that email out tomorrow after I take one last look at it to make sure that everything is where it should
Mhm.
be. So I'm hoping that y'all will be able to join us. Thank you, Peg, for a great 3 months. The books that you selected. Alan Grimes' book was wonderful. And the other Peg, I'm trying to remember. Oh,
Oh, the-
yeah,
mhm.
the Robin Cook's thriller,
Mhm.
which like had a slap your head ending on it as well. So yeah, and this book was terrific, terrific read also.
So I'll also can I just add that I've read, well, the first, and Linda has a series herself with,
Georgia
I
Steele.
is it
Georgia Steele.
Georgia? Couldn't remember her first name. Her second name is surname is Steele, so which was very good. So
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
great
Geez.
book.
thank you.
Me
Yeah,
too.
great
I read it
series.
too,
Thank
Linda.
you.
And the
Thank
other one.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Highly
Gosh, thanks you guys.
highly
Appreciate that.
recommend her series.
Yeah.
And you're working on another one too. You got another one coming out soon?
Well, I'm sending you the beta copy on February 1st, so I better be.
I'm everybody's favorite beta reader.
Yeah. Yes.
I didn't know that.
Okay. Okay. Well, it was great meeting with you all today. Anybody have any last minute things they want to say before we close off?
Happy New
Okay.
Year.
Happy New Year.
Nice to see you
Okay.
guys.
See you
Bye.
next
See
month.
you next month. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.